Hello, hello. Oh, I hope you can hear me. If there's any issues or anything like that, um, gonna give it just a few minutes just to give people time if they need to come and join and whatnot, and also just to test out the stream just a little bit more and make sure that this new music thing that I'm playing is good. We'll see, but we'll be starting in just a few. Welcome, Ryan. Oh, hey, Tanya. Yeah, I'm just giving everybody. You can't hear anything, no music, or just not me. I wonder if this music thing is input here. I think so. You should be able to hear some of my background music here. It might be a little bit low and on your side. Let me try raising it just a little bit. It's very new agey. I don't know how else to describe it. Let's skip to the next. There's just like a nice piano station. I thought this would be easier than like, or on like at least on the internet for me to use. It's good. Okay, cool. Could have sworn I saw one that was like piano. I'm like, yes, please, I'd like that. Not the one called Dirty Works. Okay. I know a bunch of people have uh, responsibilities and other things, so hopefully they'll be able to listen to the VOD later on. Want to listen to some chill piano. That's much better. Okay. Also, you might notice I got a little nick there. That is just wait. Oh no, you might not be able to see it. Could be right. Oh, let's see. That's over here. All right, you should be seeing my Obsidian screen now. So this is the program I use to make my notes. So like if we look in the graph view here, you can see tons of like the connections in like the verse. So like Jan Turing and a bunch of stuff there. Okay, so if you have any additional questions, you can feel free to put them in the chat. See, now this music's a little too loud for me. You can feel free to put it in the chat, and I will add it to the list. This is mainly just to have like a record so people know like what questions I got to. Yeah, if you have any more, like I said, you can throw them in the chat. So just to preface, this campaign started October 2024. Wild. Just the passage of time. Mainly because it's coming on 4 years now that I've been doing this job um, full time, and it feels like it was just yesterday. So kind of crazy to think about, but uh, this campaign's now going to be entering its third act. Um, the reason I kind of call it that is I kind of view the story in these bigger chunks, where kind of the focus of the guild sort of changes. I think, like, in the first act, there was a lot of just like getting a handle on the verse itself, um, being able to get a handle on the many factions, on Albion, on the ships, kind of the guild having their own ships. And even though the guild has had the Claymore for some time now, I kind of view it like, Act 1, they had the Freelancer. Act 2, they had the Galahad. Um, Act 3, they have the Claymore. At least going into it, kill rats, kill monsters, kill gods. Yes, that is how D&D progression works. But yeah, then Act 2 coming along and our players kind of learning much more about the verse, and I think largely spending a lot of time exploring, which I think is one of the things that I've enjoyed the most about this campaign, which is how much of it has been, people trying to just find answers to information and questions, and how much of it has been people um, discovering the truth. But in any case, as we're about to enter Act 3, um, very excited to see where the next direction of this campaign goes, because um, I do have an end date in mind, and so there is both the understanding that, like, not everything is gonna be accomplished that our characters may want to do, is because it would take literally years and years of time in some cases. Um, but also just kind of situating our characters and setting them up for what comes next. Because uh, just because we stop watching the movie doesn't mean it's the end of those characters' story. So, with that, let us begin. Also, I'm a little bit stuffy because I'm kind of sick, um, but I think I'm getting better, so it's okay. Since the last Q&A, what has been your favorite RP moment in game? This one is super tough because there are some moments that I've really appreciated because of uh how much they moved me, or how much payoff there was. There are also some that occurred that were resolutions to things that I had been like kind of plotting in the background for a while too. So it's hard to really say for sure, um, because we've had so many. But I think um, some of my favorites have probably been Iron Cella. I'm trying to think specifically since the last Q&A. Iron Cella, because that was a quest that I think so much work and collaboration had gone into. The performances that were rolled were like game changing, insane roles. Um, but then also too, like, all of the moments that happened from, like, you know, the party thinking that uh Dr. Teeth wasn't gonna get there, but then like he did. Oh shoot! Oh my god! What the heck? We're getting raided. What the heck? Catchy cantrips. Oh my goodness. Welcome Raiders. We're doing a Q&A here. Welcome Tatoes. Oh my god. Tatoes. We're doing a Q&A about the campaign here. Since we're about to enter Act 3. So some of our players have submitted questions. If you have any questions about the campaign or for myself, you can feel free. I'm sure. Hello, Malcolm. I'm sure our group is familiar with the Catchy Cantrips and their amazing work. If you haven't checked them out, hey Raider friendly, don't shoot. Sorry, y'all. Still a little bit sick. David. But yeah, we're doing this Q&A. This is kind of a time for players to kind of get their questions out. So feel free to throw them in chat and we'll get them answered. But welcome, y'all. Oh man, yeah. The Catchy Cantrips Tato program too is like so much more advanced now that it's like it was so funny seeing it on stream the other night when all the Tatos were like doing so many actions and so many things that it was like I was like, wow, I don't have really as much to do right now because they're so engaged in like all of their little activities, which I know it's a shiny new toy. They'll keep playing with it, but it was just so funny seeing like I was like, wow, so much hard work has been done over there to improve the stream. It's awesome to see. But yeah, we were talking about my favorite RP moment since the last Q&A, which was Iron Chala, which was a massive kind of like universal music festival. They gathered Dr. Teeth, which Dr. Teeth, it's so funny. I didn't even realize my sister we started watching the Muppets while I was at her house, and she made me realize like how much I was super into the Muppets as a kid. But I just kind of like forgot about it. And I don't know, I guess maybe I just thought like I had outgrown them at some point or something. But no, Caboose, you're great. I'm sure that there's going to be plenty of more opportunities for me to do other stuff too. It does take a lot off my plate, which gives me more time to focus on like the story stuff, which is better. But I appreciate all your work. But yeah, we had Dr. Teeth. If you're not familiar here, he was a character in our campaign, and the surprise of him showing up at the end, the performance with Eli and Elris, it was just so many good moments. When it comes to favorite battle, it'll be a learning curve for sure. Yeah, it's awesome. We've had a lot of great battles. I think some of my favorite have been the ones where you guys had to sort of come together and change up your strategies. I think the one that you guys had against like Avrax's brother Marzek, when you guys were like, okay, we're gonna like now use all our moves and do these things. Like to me that was so great because it was such a case where it was like, here's this unbeatable foe, and it took like the things you guys learned together, your past experiences and everything, for you to turn a battle that was like not a losing battle, but one that you didn't see a chance in victory, to one that you forced your enemy to reveal their ace in their hand and to also flee the battlefield. An enemy that's like pretty strong. So I think that was one that was like I was very happy with. My favorite inspiration questions, I usually ask an inspiration question at the start of each session, and those are typically character related. My favorite ones are kind of the ones that I think get you guys thinking in ways that I don't expect. One of my favorites was, I think, like, uh, where would your character be if they weren't like here on Albion? Just because it forces your character to think like what choices they might have made, like if they didn't choose to stay with the RAQ, where they might have gone in the verse. Because that's like a hard one to answer at the beginning of the campaign because you don't know as much about the verse. But then once you do, it's like, oh, um, yeah. I don't know if I have a favorite inspiration answer. I put these like in the vault in the back of my brain, and they kind of help me inform like decisions about the characters and about the players too, I guess. Um, but I don't know. I don't think I have a favorite answer specifically. But yeah, if anyone has any other questions, you can also feel free to put them in the chat. And I'll add to the list. But yeah, on to the next question. Have Florian. See if people are at it. Got more. So, question is, I'm curious how you split up the work of session prep. How much do you have done at the point you list the quest as available versus how much / what kind of tasks you wait to do in the 24 hours before session? That's a great question because I think there are many ways to fall into like planning pitfalls and trip yourself up. I think like one of the biggest mistakes that I make personally, I've made in the past is over prepping like an enemy too far in advance. Because my way of thinking about the game can like evolve and change over time. But I also I'm also not like the best note taker when it comes to like leaving myself notes that are like comprehensible. So sometimes like I'll write a stat block in the past and I'll be like, oh my god, this is such a great ability. When he uses this ability and then he'll use this thing, it'll trigger this from them. And then as a reaction, this will happen. Oh, it'll be so great. And then I read it in the future and it looks to me like the scrawlings of like a madman who's describing like some anime he saw or something. And I read it and I'm like, what is this? What is happening here? So to answer the question more directly, um, I have the concept of the quest, its general layout, beginning, general climax, and falling action. By the time that I post the quest online, um, and that's kind of why it takes me so long to post the quests is because a lot of times I need to make sure that I have enough of a concrete quest that even if for whatever reason I need to fully improvise a quest, which that would be hellish for me to try to do. But if there's any case where it's like, okay, I don't have as much time to prep, or um, I just need to be able to be flexible in how I respond to the player's choices at times. So I need to be sure that I have a good amount of the quest already kind of plotted out. If not in my head, then for sure like a base, start, beginning, end. And sometimes it is just me putting like players start here. Then my notes say battle, 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 and then it says escape. And like sometimes like escape is a question mark, but like at least then I have a general idea of like what the flow of the campaign is going to be. In a lot of ways, it's kind of like setting up an amusement park ride where I have the roller coaster track and I know I have a certain amount of track that I can use because we only play for a specific amount of time. So I kind of have to predetermine like, all right, the track's gonna function in this way. There's gonna be this kind of upward moment, this kind of downward. Um, oh, good night, Malcolm. Thanks for joining. I appreciate the follow. Have a good night. But yeah, there's sometimes a kind of uh yeah, a flow to this in a way. So because of that, it kind of takes me a long time to get the quests set up. in the start when I'm doing like the charts. That's why it's not as easy as me just being like, oh, you want to do like this like quest in this place in this area? I'm like, yeah, sure, just put like the name, because a lot of times I'm like, okay, but what does that quest look like? What would we be logistically be doing? What are the barriers to that quest? What are the potential antagonists in that situation? What is the because in any story we're looking at our protagonists dealing with the obstacles that are antagonists, whether that's villains or whether that's just the society kind of put out in front of us. And so I kind of need to figure out what that is first. When it comes to the stuff I prep day of, I try to prep the map and the actual encounters day of. Like I said, I like to have the encounter building fresh in my head. It's also something that I can kind of, when I'm in that mindset, it's a little easier for me to grasp onto the mechanics of what I'm reacting with. It's also more fresh because it's like, okay, we just had a battle, recently. The mechanics of the game, the flow of it, it's all fresh in my brain. So it's like a little bit easier for me to do it day of and say like, okay, here's the encounter, here's the creatures I'm looking at. And then the map design, I try to look either for maps that fit the encounter but have some variety in terrain or obstacles, or if I can't find anything else, then I'll be like, all right, time to make the map myself. But yeah, a lot of the map and the encounter building happens that day, as well as like the loot table usually happens either at the start of the session. I'll put inside and I'll say like, here's what loot or here's the rewards that might be found or are available, or I'll say and put like here, like there are certain creatures that do have in the D&D stat blocks like treasures that they indicate like, hey, this type of creature will drop an arcane treasure or something like that, and that helps. But sometimes I'll just put like, hey, there's a random loot drop here, and that stuff I'll usually do day of, again getting a feel for it. But yeah, I find that it allows me to have it like kind of freshest in my mind, and then yeah, that's pretty much what I like to do 24 hours before the session. And usually also too, the 24 hours before the session, once it takes me a while to process things. So once like I've read it and absorbed what the quest is and who's going on the quest, it makes it a little bit easier for me to visualize it within those 24 hours of like, okay, this is what the structure is going to look like. Next question. Hold on, I need to drink some water. All right, y'all. Let's see. There have been some changes and or additions to subclasses and game mechanics since the beginning of our campaign. We started with the base Dark Matter book, adapted to the 2024 rules, and added the updated rules from the new Dark Matter book as they were released each month. How do you handle these changes? I sort of view the rules as the seasonings in the stew that we are creating together, and the rules are like our guidelines, much in the same way how like if we're grilling, that's very different from stewing, which is very different from like deep roasting, right? There's certain parameters in place, and that's why I feel like the rules they're kind of like our choices. And so modifying them is kind of, to me, about fine-tuning and making sure that there's nothing that's upsetting the system. But in a lot of ways, cooking is also about trying to find like what's missing too, and it's also about knowing what is not there, and it kind of rules can help in those ways too. So the only issue I ever have with changes to the rules is that I have a hard time if they are changing too rapidly. I need to time to process that. But I think that I was most happy with the fact that a lot of the changes or my thought processes when it came to the 2024 rules were kind of supported. No, we're kind of the fact that Eliezer has a bard subclass that doesn't exist anymore makes him feel even more elitist. Yeah, that's awesome. I do love that too. Same thing with our void domain cleric. Um, it is funny because I also kind of view the game as like an engine, right? That we want it to run like a certain way, to run best for us. And so like there's parts and things you can adjust and change. But I've always viewed the game that way, where in a very modular sense, where it's like there are certain things. I think even when I first started running as a DM, taking like when I first ran, what was it? Tyranny of Dragons, and there's like a whole section in that quest that, like, upon reading it, I was like, wow, this sounds kind of boring. I don't really understand what the point of this is. We're gonna scrap that out and move that away. I don't know. I feel like it's a lot easier to take the work someone's already done and just make it a little bit better than it is to like go from scratch, you know? Um so yeah, I also like I I think that a big part of the culture is using like um homebrew rules and classes and subclasses and features and abilities, and making these characters and these things like more our own. Um, I take it in stride. But yeah. The next question is, as a player, I've really appreciated limiting source material to the core 2024 rule set and dark matter campaign. Is that something you see yourself doing again for campaign 3? Yes, I do. I do want to continue using the Mage Hand Press products. They're all super great. Um, they they're not like always like the most um, balanced per se, but I feel like it's not in the same way that abilities and spells from Wizards of the Coast and their books aren't balanced. I feel like a lot of times the Mage Hand Press classes and features lean into their archetypes in a way that traditional D&D classes kind of have to be generalists, while their classes are more specialized. Um, but they have so much flavor to them, or uh, have created so many memorable moments, like with the clue spell, where led to like moments of like players like discovering a set of footprints that they didn't expect there to be, or like the prevent curse spell. Like it's just like different things that I found really cool. But yeah, I still plan on limiting to just those things. I know that it's like not the most favorable position to everyone, but I, I, I'm for one, I'm not like I, I don't know. I know I'm in the minority of this because I'm a DM, but I feel like the players have plenty of options. Just like in terms of like there's so many spells, and like between the dark matter and the player's handbook already, I mean, between the subclasses and the spells and the abilities and the features and the weapons and the graphs and the like the magic and the tech, and then yeah, I don't know, I feel like it's enough features. But that's just me. I also think like you know, when this game, when especially when fifth edition first started and it was just the player's handbook, like we had plenty of adventures back then, and like, same thing like, you know, before you know, I got into 3.5 and I was just reading the basic rules. I was like, oh wow, this game is great. And like then I discovered how many feats and things were available that it broke my brain. Um, but yeah, I think limitations are good. I think that having constraint parameters and like the edge of the kind of portrait, you know, knowing where your edges are, I think that's great. Otherwise, uh, it's a little, I don't know. Sometimes in the search of trying to do everything, you end up doing nothing. Um, but yeah. Next question, uh, which I did have to adjust just for privacy's sake, but West March's campaign are obviously designed to allow players to drop in and out as scheduled permit. That said, losing a player and character as integral to the meta narrative and community was a blow we all felt. I guess this is part of this question. Damn. How do you, as a GM, deal with the loss of such an important protagonist? Uh, that's a very good question. um, the thing is, so again, like, look at this big graph here. This is a majority of the quests that have actually are properly tagged with players and their characters like listed here. Obviously, there are some bubbles here that are bigger than others. And that just means that they've been on more quests than others, but they are still integral to many different plot lines and NPCs. It's hard because I not only have to be flexible for real life accommodations and for scenarios and changes and choices in life, but I also have to adjust for in-game character choices and decisions that they make. So it's something that I have to constantly be mindful of and almost tweaking and adjusting. Um, and again, I love my analogies here. Um, it's a little bit like if I'm and I don't want this to sound like I'm doing all the work or anything like that, but it's a little bit like I'm navigating on this boat, and the boat is the players, I guess, or the campaign. And like I'm running over to port side, and I'm adjusting a rope, and I'm like pulling it tighter so we can veer a little bit left, and then I like run over to the front, and I'm like, all right, I gotta like quickly like take these like things over and like adjust the sails. um and I view that as how I kind of have to accommodate for the loss of a protagonist at certain points of the campaign. Because there may be just circumstances where a player just cannot play at that time. Some may have to take breaks and come back later. Some may just not be able to play as much as they used to. But at the end of the day, um, every character who plays in the campaign, I try to consider what their story is and what their overall narrative end is going to be. So, and the boat is on fire. The players are roasting hot dogs and setting more fires. We were the ship of Theseus all along. Guys are too funny. um, it's one of those things where I think the ship of Theseus thing is kind of like a valid comparison. Because on the one hand, I do make an effort to try not to make certain plot lines just or at least certain narrative uh plot lines completely dependent or hinging on one person. Because that's just gonna set myself up for failure there. Because there's also always a chance that I present a plot line that nobody's interested in. So it's kind of hard to say who's going to be interested in what at any given moment, or who's going to want to take control or take the lead on a certain action or direction. But there are also certain ways in which um, I have to be mindful of the types of players that that we have, and the types of stories that they either like to tell, or the way that they engage most with the game. So, like, for example, Becky plays Elris, and she has this whole um, time loop story going on here, right? Um, and this is the kind of uh, plot line that obviously it's specific to her, right? It is one that is like her character is going through this. But the exploration of the shadow realm and discovering things down there isn't specifically relying on her. She just kind of gave you guys the pathway through there. But her plot line is one I chose for her because of Becky as a player. Because the question isn't if Elris is going to um, go back in time and try to change things. The question is, is Elris gonna make a different choice this time? Is she gonna break her pattern? And that's one that I feel like is more of a self uh um kind of pathway. Um for one, that's a for like a character who has a kind of self exploration of kind of coming to find themselves and come to that own conclusion, which I felt like was very fitting for Elris. Um, and then Ryan says, or you get a clueless player like me who took way too long to figure out that fairy tale quest line was tied to my character. um, well, there are also plenty of times where I should probably be better about communication, but um, there's there are also plenty of times where I put a quest and I'm like, oh man, I cannot wait for them to put this quest out here. I try to make it as alluring as possible. And when they get on this quest, they're gonna learn so much cool information. It's gonna be so great. And then for some reason you guys are like, we're not doing that quest. Not for a long time. So it's always fascinating to me what things like the characters grip on. But yeah, whereas with Fina's character starting the campaign with no memories, obviously that gave a lot of leeway for what her character's arc and story could be. And it didn't have as like much of an I don't think anybody has as much of like an end point to their campaign that I sort of plan out. Um Nor do I have like a sort of like this person is necessary or integral to the plot in like if they die the story ends kind of way. But I do have to constantly be flexible, and I do have to kind of cut my losses sometimes and say and acknowledge like, okay, this approach isn't working, or like they're chasing up like the wrong tree or something. Like what was it? There was something the other day that I think like JB had done like a oh yeah, a commune spell, and had asked the question, and I had answered like irrelevant, and he was like, I think the DM chose that for a reason. And it was one of the moments where like I did definitely choose it for a reason. There are some times where I'm like sorry. There are some times where I'm like, nah, it's not irrelevant. But then this was one time where I was like, I don't want you barking up the wrong tree. Like this not irrelevant. Like don't even bother looking over here. Um and so I think like there's some times where um where's I going with this? Where players just do that to themselves. But I kind of have to then know like, all right, we need some other kind of direction or helping hand. There was a reel I saw. I forgot the GM, but he had mentioned how like, what do you do when a player asks like a question about like the story, or like says they don't understand something. And he was like, I just remind them. And like apparently that was like not controversial, but like it was a hot take. And I was like, yeah, of course, you just remind them. Do you know how much information like you're telling them over the course of like all this time? Like, sure, like if it's something that's like could give them like a little bit of like an advantage, I guess, in the moment, and they're looking for some kind of like thing, I'm like, yeah, okay, roll a dice and see if you recall it or something. But for the most part, if there's an uncertainty or an unclarity about like what's your character's direction, then I've done something wrong. But yeah, that's how I kind of deal with it. I just kind of have to be flexible, I guess. It also sucks because every character, like I don't invite any player into the campaign unless I'm like, okay, I'm looking forward to seeing you and grow and develop with the campaign and the group. So even if they've only been here for one session, it still sucks. I still feel that same disappointment of like, oh man. But it is what it is. And then they also asked as a follow up, do I prune storylines you had planned for him or just shift them? Some of them I shift. Um, but some of them I just prune just because there's also like I don't expect everything to be solved and done and just and tackled. Some of them are just like, okay, I don't need to rush this out. I don't need to try to get this done. I can save this for the future. And I think that's one thing that I've learned as a DM over time is that you literally can save everything for the future. Um, and there's literally not like a rush to be like, I gotta get this thing out. Because even stuff that in the past, like even stuff 12 years ago that I was like, man, I sure would love a group that we could do this kind of thing with. That'd be cool. Um, I never would have thought I'd be in the positions to be where I am now, where it's like, oh my god, I have the group. This is the right group. This is the right party. Oh my god, this is gonna be so amazing. I still get excited when I realize like those moments are there. So I usually just save them for later, and I'm like, there's still plenty more to discover in the future. Which brings us to our next question. The verse was a big swing, big stakes, massive corporations, limitless space. We know that you plan on scaling back that scope in the next campaign. What parts of the verse did you think exceeded your expectations, and what unforeseen problems did it cause you as a GM? Great question. Also, Lou says, as a DM, I find players will never bite on intended red herrings, but will invent dozens of their own, and sometimes it can become worth a DMing following, and other times they just need to go, this is a misunderstanding between us. Let's reestablish the situation. Yeah, totally. Sorry, my voice is getting a little harsh. Um, Completely agree, Lou. Yeah, sometimes it's hard to recognize in the moment. I guess it's one of those things you just gotta screw it up enough times to realize, like, okay, I gotta fix this. In terms of the Q&A question, so for those who aren't aware, I do plan on scaling back the next scope of the next campaign. I expected this campaign and the next one to begin around October. And I'm kind of thinking it's hard because I haven't quite settled on. I really want to still capture the exploration aspect, but it is one of my great joys to have so many places that are so kind of like unique and iconic that we build together through exploration. And I'm trying to find a way to mix those two while still bringing down the scale. Um, and for those who aren't aware, I'm kind of thinking of a sort of almost Star Trek style um, crew, or yeah, whole crew who are kind of adventuring together, except that your commander of your ship is kind of an imbecile, and so it's up to like our officers and our other crewmates and maybe chiefs and whatnot to kind of go together and um, decide to change things or succeed on the mission and whatnot. That's how I'm also trying to balance between that and like our offline game, as well as our like opportunity for discovery and creation, and also players pursuing their own endeavors, which is another aspect I believe is like important for the West Marches campaign. Um, so I haven't quite balanced that part out yet. But in terms of the verse, what exceeded my expectations was, I think, how eager most of the players were to like um, try to tackle really big problems. Um, and not that I didn't foresee that happening, but I think I did not anticipate the curiosity and the exploration of the players. I think like one of the things, and it probably also led to an unforeseen problem, was the fact that we had Albion, this like very rich world here. But I think um, the fact that we could go literally to infinite worlds, and that on infinite worlds we could discover infinite peoples and species and histories and cultures, and you uh even outside of just like the factions, our players' own personal stories, we could spend an entire campaign just exploring and hopping from planet to planet, staying there for 2 weeks, and then going to another planet, staying there for 2 weeks. Um, and that would be an entire campaign in its own right, because uh, I think like I think that's it kind of pushed me in a way as well to kind of grow the skill of like developing these worlds and these places and these people. Um, and but it did cause the problem of my brain can only fit so much information, and even for me, it does get to the point where it's like, well, there's a lot in this universe here, and as a DM, having to, I oftentimes view my role like, again, as a like a kind of neutral being who is processing like the choices and decisions you make into like my processor and my brain, and then it spits out like the world's status. And the more and more that we play, the more and more, oh yeah, so this is like a good, this is like a perfect good analogy, that again, this graph here, because this is like when we first started the campaign, it's like, all right, we were like just a few things here, and then more and more as we've gone out, the connections have expanded, 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 and so my brain is like the same thing as this, and that I've never had difficulty. Like I've never experienced that difficulty before, where it gets to the point where I'm like, damn, I cannot rely on the information in my head with certainty. I need to go and check the notes because there is like so much happening, so much going on. Um, so yeah, a fun exercise, which is something I had foreseen as a problem when I first wanted to do a Spelljammer campaign, or a space campaign, where I was just like, it's limitless, it's space. What do you even? But I think that, kind of like I mentioned before, having a tighter scope, I think, is better for story, is better for, you know, um, art, having constraints and limitations well defined in a way. Um, but yeah, I also want to enable people to have the freedom to do the things they want to do. So that was one of the things that also exceeded my expectations, which was like uh, how much everyone wanted to do. But not in the sense of like, oh, we want to like do our little things and run our businesses, but like how much um, of a change I think players wanted to make, which is admirable, of course. And it only shows like the level of care I think in the campaign. Um, but yeah, I think I'm always surprised at how much people care about what I've made. I think like even to this point, I'm still surprised, and I'm like, wow, yeah, you guys really care about this. It's yeah, um, very mind blowing. But that would be my thoughts on that. And then Lou asks, what is this music? Lou asks, I imagine how the diversity of character types in our group campaign are skewed affects what kind of plot lines get followed. Did our surplus of bards and druids lead to something like the whale song being significant? Has our lack of wizards led to certain arcane plot lines being unexplored? Yes, and yes. Both of those questions. Um, on the one hand, it's not necessarily that the whale song was gonna be not gonna be significant. Um, I have long had an obsession with the whale song. I love music. Um, I think like it's very very important to me. It's very important to me and my daughter. And we have a strong musical connection. Um, and in a lot of ways, there is something I think that is magical about music. It is literally like a spell. You can listen to a song and it can change your emotional state. You can feel empowered, it can make you angry. Music can control the masses, it can cause hysteria, um, riots in the streets, but it can bring peace and joy and happiness. Um, and I think that, like, this idea that there's a resonance to the universe, some kind of vibration that we can tap into that uh, brings us closer together. I think, like, I've always had the idea that that was going to be an important aspect. It's more like how rapidly it was uncovered. Uh, Definitely is due to the surplus of bards and druids, where because so many bards and druids are in the campaign, so many attempts at pursuing and following these plot lines and going down these paths and asking these questions. Where if there weren't as many, then there might not have been that connection, or there might not have been as many follow-ups. And who knows as well too, because the other thing is, like, because maybe 2 or 3 players are taking the lead on following something up, it kind of maintains that momentum and it keeps getting followed up on and focused on over the course of a period of time. But maybe when it's just 1 or 2 and they only follow up on it like every month or so, then it's like the other players also don't pick up on it as quickly, or don't understand uh, the full grasp of it either. Kind of like with like the SBL, where it's like, because a lot of interactions with them happened like earlier on in the campaign in Act 1, and there weren't as many in Act 2 until like the end of it here. For some players, listening or hearing about the SBL is kind of like, wait, what? Who are these people? Why does this matter to us? Like, um, so I think the same thing kind of can occur. Um, and then likewise, when it comes to the wizards, yes, 100%. Our lack of wizards has led to certain arcane plot lines being unexplored. There's the whole town of Frostmist to the northeast of Canberry, which is a arcanist town with mage towers and whatnot. So, like, that's an entire town that, like, I feel like the only reason we don't spend more time there is because we don't have that many arcane people. So that's like a complete situation where it's like, maybe if we did have like 4 or 5 wizards who wanted to make connections in Frostmist, or like find people who had specific spell components, or spell scrolls for them, or like we're looking to meet a specific teacher. Um, yeah, Pi wants to go to Frostmist, and that's exactly what I mean. So now we might get to see a little bit more Frostmist, but you know, that's like a perfect example of how that works. Oh yeah, that was our list of questions for 2026. If you have any additional questions, now's the time to submit them. Or excited for this next arc. It's gonna be a blast. Mainly because, um, like I kind of mentioned earlier, the campaign's gonna end, but it's not necessarily the end of these characters' story. They still get to kind of live on, and in some cases, I prefer that. Um, in some cases I prefer that because I prefer um I don't know, like I'd rather, like you either die a hero or live long enough to become a villain, right? Or whatever. Um or like I guess like there are many times where characters and stories can like outstay their welcome, and it's such a hard thing to know before you get there. Um, I'd rather things come to an end than ever risk getting to the point where it's like, oh man, this should have ended a while ago. There's the whole jumping the shark, right? Um, which is the moment where like the series are like, okay, we've kind of lost the plot here. Um, so like in a lot of ways, um, like when it came to our first campaign, with the World of Tyr, it wasn't a perfect campaign by any means, but I am very happy that it did end where it did, um, because that world and that story, it only exists like in our collective minds, but there's no telling what happened in those worlds next. And in some ways, I don't know, I kind of hope that like these memories, they kind of remain in your minds over time, and you think about these characters and feel comfort in knowing that like we did not define what their endings exactly were, nor did they ever overstay their welcome and kind of sour their taste for us. um and I kind of prefer things that way. um the only difference with the verse is just that there's so much of it that it's like, man, we could be like 5 light years away and explore a whole solar system, spend our time in that campaign, and like never end up interacting with any of the other people here. It's just wild how big the universe is. Um, let's see here. Last question, it looks like, from Tanya, which is, what exactly should Tara be doing next? I don't know, Tara. I don't know, Tanya. Uh, should is um, a strong word because uh, it really depends on what she wants to accomplish. If is her goal just living in peace? Does she want to just go to her temple and try to save as many lives and souls as she can? How much does she desire to see, things change on a systemic level? And since she knows that the um, corruption goes so high, she knows that it will not be small incremental changes that will end up changing that system. So it ultimately depends on what she wants to do, because as much as she may seek the guidance of the sun, I also think uh, the sun is there to support her in her choices. If it's a battle she thinks is worth fighting, then it will give her the tools to fight. But there are plenty of people who become martyrs for a cause and do end up seeing that cause come to light, but long, long after they're gone. Tara could live a nice, peaceful life on Albion or her temple. Nothing wrong with a nice, peaceful life either. But that's it for today's Q&A stream, y'all. I hope to see some of you in our game night later and probably play some silly games. And if you're watching this VOD later on, sorry you couldn't make it, but I hope you found this informative. As always, these are a blast to do. You guys ask such interesting questions. But yeah, tune in, everybody. See when I get the next stream going on. Get back into. It's gonna be it for today. I'm gonna take a quick nap before our game night. But thanks, y'all.